Hello and welcome to Cardio Live. I'm James Baggett, I'm the founder of Cardio Magazine, and today on the show I'm chatting to Bill Berman, boss of arguably the most talked about dealer group in the UK, Pendragon. Good afternoon, Bill, or should I say good morning? I think you're in Florida at the moment.
Yeah, good morning, James. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much for joining me, Bill. Bill, so for those who don't know you, I'm going to give you a quick introduction. Firstly, Pendragon was previously the biggest dealer group in the UK by turnover and still up there despite the problem it's been having recently. It owns Evan Houshall, Stratstone and Carstore, as well as a parts business, Quitco, software company, Pinewood and a leasing business, PVM. Now, Bill's kindly agreed to be interviewed by me today, despite only being in the role since February. He took over in September, though, as interim chairman and CEO. Now, before joining Pendragon, he was president and chief operating officer of AutoNation, the largest automotive retailer in America. Okay, so we've got a lot to get through. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to submit your questions, and if relevant, I'll feed them through to Bill, but he's going to have to take mine first. I've got quite a lot of them. Bill, thank you once again for joining me. Firstly, let's talk about what attracted you to the Pendragon job.
It was unique, and you just talked about some of it, James. It's the uniqueness and the positioning of Pendragon. It's not just an automotive retailer. I've been in automotive retail for 30 plus years, thoroughly love it, enjoy it. The thing that's unique about Pendragon is that it's multifaceted. You have obviously a standalone used car operation, which I think is brilliant and a future for our industry. You have things like PVM, our standalone leasing company, and kind of the crown jewel in the whole thing. Pinewood Technologies, our CRM and DMS system, which is industry leading. So it was a unique set of assets, and it wasn't something that I was looking for, and it was kind of one of those things. Through happenstance and different situations, I kind of got pulled into it, but I couldn't be happier or more proud of leading this amazing company into the future, and just look forward to what the future is going to become as soon as we can get out of lockdown. That is.
So we'll come on to many of those topics in a bit, Bill. I mean, firstly, you're obviously in America at the moment, as you've said.
Yep.
So how are you finding that? Are you living in the UK, or are you having?
No, absolutely. No, I actually. Kind of a weird story. So I've been commuting back and forth when I was doing the interim piece. I just gotten a flat in March, literally 10 days before the lockdown happened. Like oftentimes I got into a flat, it had no internet. I couldn't get the internet provider out there or the cable TV or any of that type of stuff. Brand new place, the refrigerator didn't work. And after 2 weeks of lockdown with no refrigerator, no internet, I'm like, well, if this thing's going to be extended, I might as well be home with my wife and my 3 daughters. So I came back, and I just get up really early now. So I get up around 4:30 our time and get productive. And it's actually worked well. I mean, kind of like what you said, our business has been reinvented, right? So, we're working remotely, and whether I have team members in Nottingham to London, up into Scotland, and even our chief marketing officer is stationed out of the West Coast of the US. So, we're kind of scattered all across the world, but we're performing well and getting the job done.
So, Bill, talk me through your typical day at the moment. How's it working?
I get up really early. It's pitch black dark out. But, I'm in my chair normally between 4:30 and 5 my time, which is about 9:30, 10 o'clock UK time. We have multiple different standard meetings. Some of them are just basic blocking and tackling. Accounting meeting to make sure, we're collecting all of our receivables, how are their cash positions, how we're working through that. One of the things that we did, and we had started this in the early part of March, is we actually had kind of developed a task force. We called it originally the COVID task force. And it was, as we were seeing, different parts of Europe and Asia starting to get affected by the pandemic, we started putting plans together to how we're going to deal with this if and when it hit, our business in the UK. And we sat here and I think had put ourselves in a very good position. Like a lot of our peers out there, we went for fully operational to complete lockdown in, less than 24 hours. And we're able to secure all of our facilities, service all of our customers. We have a large operation, lots of footprints, lots of vehicles in the service department. We were able to get just about every single car out of the service departments and into our customers' hands. And since then, now we've changed those calls from talking about the pandemic. It's kind of our own internal code word, but we call our new kind of task force reignition. You got to have the little car guy and car girl themes there. So we sat here and turned it around, and now it's how about do we come back into the business? How do we open up again? How do we do it in a way that's safe for our associates, safe for our customers, and also in a way that can facilitate the way business is going to have to transact going forward. With social distancing and a much more heavily focus on online sales. I mean, you saw our numbers yesterday. I mean, we've been able to not just do a click and collect, but we've actually piloted and successfully launched We Come to You. We've done over 1,000 home deliveries where a customer sat here and was able to start a transaction online, did just about the entire thing without any human intervention. And then we just kind of finished up those little bits and pieces and then delivered the vehicle right to their home in a completely socially, isolated way. It's been great.
Bill, do you think dealership's going to be open on June the 1st?
That's what we're striving for. So our plan is to have the vast majority of our stores open on June 1. It's hard to say. Scotland and Wales might have a little bit different of an opinion, and kind of work through that. But our target date is June 1st.
Just a little bit of detail about your role. Over the last few years, there's been a lot of swings and roundabouts, isn't there, in the Pendragon boardroom? I mean, the chairman, CEO, CFO have all changed quite recently. I mean, what are your observations as to what happened at Pendragon before you joined?
It's hard to say. I mean, Pendragon kind of reminded me a little bit of my prior company here in the States, and it was an industry leader. I think Trevor and that team that really founded this company from the ground up, which is virtually unheard of anymore. Just did some amazing and brilliant things and acquired and assembled some great assets. I mean, we still have a handful of stores in the U.S., but the stores that we did have in volume and size were great assets and things that nobody could ever, assimilate or accumulate again. And even within the UK, the different businesses that had been put together, from PVM, our leasing company, to Pinewood. I mean, it's just brilliant. Like a lot of things, and I wasn't there for some of it. Somewhere along the way, I think the board had one kind of vision of things, and I think Trevor, had a different. He's an industry icon, especially in the UK. I knew of him all the way in the States, and sometimes things diverge, and they went their different ways. And oftentimes, when you're trying to fill the shoes of somebody like a Trevor Finn, that's not easy to do. And we've had some stumbles along the way, but I think we're in a good position now. I think the thing that the company's done best is the people. When you look at assets, buildings are great, franchises are great, theories and methodologies, but at the end of the day, it's all about your people. And I would say we have the industry leading group of people working with us.
I mean, some would say, Bill, that you've got a bit of a poison chalice with this role. What would you say to them?
It's a challenge. You got to think, for all intents and purposes, for a year, almost a year and a half, there really wasn't, leadership from the front. I go by the adage, pace the leader, pace the pack. But if you don't have a leader, where's everyone supposed to go? And sometimes, things start to kind of peel off and go in directions maybe they shouldn't. We made some missteps, and I think that, the best thing that the company did was correct this. And, we're coming into this year. And if you looked at the way this year started, with a lot of the things that had been put into place end of last year and going into this year, the team had done a really good job. They had risen to the occasion, made some tough decisions, and were, progressing to really have a good year. We'd started off incredibly strong. Even maybe, from what we could tell, outpacing maybe the rest of the marketplace. And, but like anything in life, things get thrown at you and you have to deal with it. Of all my emergency planning, and like you said, I'm from the States, so we worry about hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes and different natural disasters here. Pandemic was never been one on the top of my list. So, and I've never had an entire business, 150 plus locations, and 7,500 people put on lockdown ever. It's unprecedented. But you deal with it and you move on.
Talk to me a little bit, Bill, about the Lookers merger that we covered recently. I mean, there's clearly some thought that together you two could cut costs and be stronger. I mean, how did that process come about?
I think that got overplayed just a little bit. The real skinny of it was, I'm just looking around. The business is going to change as we come out of this. I'm not sure, every store with every company is going to be able to, survive this. There's a high likelihood that volumes are going to be down. That smaller, maybe independent dealer groups may, not survive this, which would be unfortunate. Competition is always good. And just looking at it, to me, I think the bigger you can be, the better synergies you can get, economies of scale, the bigger and healthier and the better able to compete that you can be. Lookers, there was no real discussions. We had, only thing I did is send a letter to their chairman saying, would you like to have a discussion? And just did it kind of in a formalized manner. That was it. We never even had the discussion. They said they weren't in a place to have a discussion, respected that, and we moved on. And then 2 weeks later, a story broke. But we never had any type of discussion whatsoever. So I think it was overplayed a little bit. It is what it is. But do I see things like that happening? Probably. Whether it's on the privately held groups or some of the publics, my guess is the landscape's going to look different a year or two from now than it does today.
Some people would say the Pendragon got a little bit too big, and that was its problem. But I mean, you're clearly looking at this in the opposite, in that you need it to be bigger. Is that the case?
Well, I do, because we're not able to really represent all of our brands and really go to market with a competitive message. I mean, if we advertise throughout the whole of the UK, I have all kinds of places where I don't have representation of certain brands. And the challenge when you're a new vehicle franchise dealer, while our EH brand is sizable, but all of a sudden you realize that a third of it is one particular brand, so 2/3 are spattered out through 20 different brands. It's really hard to go to market with a cohesive message, and it's hard to tie all that in together and really be able to go out there with our brand proposition and really compete. So to me, either you need to be have great representation in a small geographic area where you can really go out there and compete to the marketplace, or you've got to be a little bit bigger and have more across a larger scheme. But like I said, some of our other assets, and you brought other stores in, other groups in, I think our assets would be very complementary to them. PVM, Pinewood, and even Quidco. Those are unique assets that we have that nobody else does. So when you do bring things in, there's economies of scales right there. Just like with Pinewood, if you brought more dealers in, there's more dealer customer base for our software company. And then that company gets to grow from that as well. So there was lots of different things, but you saw what Ford announced pre-pandemic about the reduction of their store count, their footprint. There's going to be more of that in the marketplace, and the way I see it, the pie is probably going to be smaller as we come out of this. I just want a bigger piece of it.
So it sounds like you're actively looking for some other mergers there. I mean,
not really. I mean, once again, it was just we looked at Lookers, once again, a great company. Their stores and their footprint kind of laid over and kind of really complemented ours. No, I mean, I'm not calling anybody. We're not looking for anything aggressively. It was a one and done. I'd say more of my statement is I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't consolidation out there. But no, we're not actively looking right now.
I mean, I hate to say it, but one analyst described the merger as two drunks bumping into each other in a bar.
Yeah.
Do you honestly think that you could make it work, or
I do.
could have made it work?
Listen, James, we didn't get in deep into it, so it was one of those things from afar. So, it's from the outside, long distance away. There was some logic to have a conversation. As you got into it, and I did see the two drunks bumping into each other. The imagery was great. I don't see it that way, but as we got further into discussions, if that had come to thing here, it may have come into that, and we would have backed away. But once again, we never got to that point.
So, what are your thoughts on the new car market in the UK going forward, Bill? I mean, is there going to be a bounce in your mind?
It's going to be challenging. So we have more than just dealing with the pandemic. We're also obviously in the middle of Brexit negotiations, and that's going to have a huge impact on the business as well. I would say there's certain themes that are going to translate through, whether you're looking in Asia, Europe, North America, more specifically into the UK. Listen, we're going to be in some tough economic times, and these are not things that are going to correct themselves quickly. I think as we come out of this, there's going to be a slight bump to the positive, but we have a lot of sold orders ready for delivery. Hopefully, if our normal numbers hold up, the vast majority of those should, come to fruition. But once you get through that, once you get through the pent-up demand on the parts and service side of the business, you're going to have to see what the landscape looks at that point in time there. And you're looking at, what the economy is going to look like. Lots of big companies are laying off large swaths of people. That has a, cascading effect through the economy. And, cars are big ticket items. And, if you don't have to have a car, and sometimes you can delay it, customers might be in that space. Now, on the flip side, on the used car side of the business, I see some positives and some opportunity. I know for me, I'm probably less likely to get on a train or get on a tube. I'd probably drive my own car rather than take those if I could. If I was a consumer that was primarily using public transportation, I may consider buying a reasonably priced, low mileage used vehicle to be able to commute because it's safer. And it's less chance of you having contact or being face to face with someone that may be sick. I wouldn't want to be an Uber driver right now or whatever else. If you're in the city, I would much rather be in a black cab where there's standards and there's protection between you and the driver. Ubers don't look at that. And if you look at what the OEMs have done, even on some of their different mobility programs, by and large, most of the big OEMs have gotten out of their ride sharing services. They've got out of their subscription services and they're focusing more on pure retail. And I think that may be the one kind of bright spot in this whole thing. But the whole dynamics of the industry and the economy are going to change, and we're going to have to be agile and be able to to adjust to that.
Pendragon represents a lot of manufacturers in the UK. What are the relationships like with those manufacturers?
You know what? I think as of late, I think in early times they were good. I know, the last couple of years with a couple brands, there was some friction, and now friction's not always bad. There always has to be a little kind of a give and take on these types of things. I think through the last several months, especially with the pandemic, the relationships with all of the OEMs, with all of the retailers probably has improved significantly. I think everybody's realized that they need each other to be able to survive this. The OEMs need their distribution network, which the retailers need. And obviously we need them because they're our supplier and they give us what we need to sell. So I think the relationships are good. I think the relationship and, on a go forward basis is going to change. I think it's going to be a lot more kind of balanced and, synergistic because you're going to have to be. We're going to have to look at new ways to work with customers. And it's going to have to be, ideas that come from both ends of the spectrum.
If I take a look at your portfolio, you've got a number of franchises in Evans Household that are really exposed to brands that are going through some serious reorganisation. You mentioned it before. I mean, does the fact that Vauxhall and Ford are changing what they're doing and the way they want to be represented in the UK worry you at all?
So right now, Vauxhall is a little bit of an enigma. We're going to have to work through that, especially with the merger with PSA and Fiat, and see how all that plays out. I can tell you on the Vauxhall side, they've been great with us. They've worked and when they've wanted a store closed down, they've given us opportunity for another store. They've incentivized us to be able to do it. I think they're working through that the best way possible. Now, obviously, this is all pre-pandemic, so who knows when they come out of this and what the direction they're going to take from there. I applaud Ford. Ford sat here before all this looked and realized they had too many stores, not enough throughput through their stores, and we're looking to close down stores. Ford's unique because they have factory-owned stores as well as franchise stores, and a lot of the stores they're talking about closing down are, I would kind of call them satellite stores. They're standalone service centers. They're small things here. Some of those we supported. The closures that they had talked about pre-pandemic really didn't affect us. We had 3 or 4 that really don't make a big difference in our day-to-day operations. To me, with the Ford thing here, I think it was going to be very advantageous for us. We're a large Ford dealer. We're their largest dealer besides themselves. And the stores that they were talking about closing would do nothing but give our existing businesses more throughput. So to us, it came across as a welcome revelation.
What about the Volkswagen Group? I mean, that's one a part of the industry that you don't really have any representation with. Is that something you'd like to change?
It is. It is. Now we do in some ways because we have 6 Porsche stores. So I mean that's on the high end of it. But on VW and Audi, we don't have a representation, and that kind of goes back to your earlier conversation about mergers and size and scale. I cannot offer a full suite of brands to consumers. And VW, Audi, I mean that's the largest car company in the world. So and we don't represent those brands. So yes, I would love to, in the right circumstances, in the right locations, I would love to represent those brands.
Just before I move on to some other of my topics, I'm just going to turn to a couple that we've had in via YouTube. First one from chap called Dave says, you're planning on opening your branches again on 1st of June. Will that be with all staff back or skeleton staff?
It's going to be, I wouldn't say a skeleton team, but what we're looking at is bringing people back slowly, kind of, letting the market pull our people back into the stores versus us just throwing everybody in. First off, with social distancing and trying to redo that, we're trying to adjust. So I'll give you an example. We're not putting our technicians, right next to each other stall. So we're, staggering them out. As our service business comes back and we see what the demand is, we're going to increase that. We may go to double shifts. Just to make sure that we protect our associates in our service stalls the appropriate way. And the same thing with our sales staffs. We're going to let the demand of the sales side dictate to what level we bring people back.
And a question here from Paul, who says, can you be big and agile?
I believe so. I absolutely believe so, because you can be really small and really agile and not really able to compete. Like I said, you either need to be really small and own a small area and be really good at it, or you need to be big enough to sit here and represent the entire market.
So yesterday you reported on the first quarter, which we covered on the Car Dealer Magazine website. There was a lot to pick out from that. I mean, what were your highlights?
I'd say our highlights were, a couple. First and foremost, the year started off very strong for us. We were ahead of our budget and our target. From the numbers we could see, we are outperforming the marketplace as a whole. And a lot of the hard work and a lot of the initiatives and the stuff that had started in the latter half of last year really started to come to fruition. I mean, the market was strong and we were performing well in it. Next piece is how we were able to sit here and manage the initial stages of the pandemic and the shutdown. And the thing I'd say I'm most proud of and really would pick out of it would be how we performed during the lockdown. I mean, we have, every day it's another, 100 plus, sales, but we're, approaching 4,000 sold orders currently, and we've delivered well over 1,000 vehicles directly to consumers' homes. And I think that's going to be something that, as we come out of this, is still going to be a large piece of our business. And we've taken this time and used it productively to build, those systems, those processes, and those capabilities. And I think that'll give us an advantage going forward.
Looking at your balance sheet, there's a lot of debt on it, pension liability, and what are your plans to tackle that, Bill?
So, once again, a lot of the work that was done at the end of last year, we had already sat here and we recently sat here and did a complete refinance, got an amend and extend on our current RCF, pushed that out by over a year. We've gone through our audit, our going concerns, and had done very well on that. And we had also sat here and, worked out a way to pay down the pension deficit. And we were able to accomplish all this at the end of February, first part of March. So we're right now in a good place on all of those. Yes, I wish we had a much stronger balance sheet, but the work that we did the latter half of last year, first part of this year, has put us in a position where we're going to be able to compete going forward.
So this crisis must have put that, given that a bit of a setback.
Well, it has. I mean, like most companies, we've had to delay our CapEx and some of the strategic initiatives that we wanted to go to. We've had to shelf for right now. But like I said, we sat here and this is where you're agile and you redirect your time, your focus, and your money, and you invest in things that can pay off today. And then we start to strategize and figure out how we're going to compete tomorrow.
So you've recently had your funding cut. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was from 240 million to 175 million. And with that sort of debt, does that concern you at all, or what are your plans?
I mean, not really, because it really wasn't cut. It just went down proportionately. So we sold 4 of the stores in the U.S. We had shut down 22 of the car stores, and there was a fair number of Vauxhall and other stores that had closed down. They had run the course of the contracts, or we had worked strategically with the OEMs. So when you really look at it, it had gone down proportionate to our size and to our scale. But it more than gives us in normal times, the funding levels that we need. And the one thing that's unique in the UK from my prior experiences, we only have 2 times a year where we really have where cash gets a little tight, which is in March and September when you have the registration and the peaks in sales. Outside of that, we run significantly way below our peak and have more than enough capital and room in our facilities to sit here and operate.
Well, you've touched on that credit facility as well. I mean, it's going to expire in 2022. I mean, does that concern you at all, or are you confident that's going to be sorted?
Well, pre-pandemic, it was perfect. We had the different strategic initiatives that we were going to start to put into play. We had already been talking to our banks, and they were supportive of the vision that we had laid out for them, and wanted to continue to be partners with ours. And as I've talked to them as of late, they feel the same way. The only thing that concerns me now is, what's the overall market look like? How are the funding sources? You just don't know how deep some of this is going to go into. But my guess is, if everything goes as planned, we open June 1st, we can get back to some semblance of normalcy. Over the next 3 or 4 months, we'll be out there looking to do, a complete refinance overlaid with our strategic initiatives, and give us the ability to go out there. And I'm sure that our partners out there will come to the table and work with us.
What do your shareholders think of Pendragon, Bill?
Well, it's part of the thing, and the way I got to the position I am is because the shareholders once again kind of pulled me into it. I originally came in as nothing more as a non-executive director on the board. I had skill sets that could help with some of the sales in the U.S. And some different pieces. And it's kind of the major shareholders who have sat here and really asked me to take on these other opportunities, other roles. We have 4 or 5 large shareholders that own the vast majority of the company, and they've been nothing but supportive.
How do you go about protecting the business going forward?
I mean, you kind of touched upon it. I mean, the first thing is, as we went into this, cash is king in the business, and the best way is to conserve cash at all costs, and be as pragmatic about it, and not to take any undue risk in today's climate. So things where you might have been a little bit more aggressive and maybe swing for the fence a little bit, you're going to have to be a little bit more cautious about some of those things here. But cash conservation is key. And then really, as you put your strategic initiatives out and you really look to what your focus is going to be, you're just going to have to be very pragmatic about it. It's just not going to be throwing money against the wall and see what sticks, right? Bill,
how many staff have you got as part of the company now?
7,500 approximately.
And are they happy working for the business?
You know what? If a year ago, I'd probably say probably not. I'd say as last year, has progressed, and as we went into this year, I think those attitudes have changed significantly. And once again, you didn't have a leader, you didn't have anyone really driving it. It's people might not always like the decisions, but they're happy to have somebody at the head of the or at the helm, kind of driving the ship, so to speak. And when you don't have that, that poses challenges and problems. And I think they did. Today it's going to, I think, especially with some of the furlough schemes from the government, some different things, I think they're cautiously optimistic. And they're just waiting to see what comes out on the other side.
What about the car store strategy by Pendragon, Bill? Was that a mistake?
I think the idea and the overall strategy of having a standalone direct-to-consumer, play on used vehicles is a good one. You can look at all kinds of different companies that have done extremely well. In the U.S., you've got companies like CarMax that do very, very well with standalone used vehicle operations. You have Motorpoint within the U.K. that once again does very, very well. As a PLC, it's got a higher market cap than several of the other new car franchise dealers kind of put together. So I think it was really good. It's always easy to dissect it and look backwards and say shoulda, coulda, woulda. I think the pace that they've tried to grow and trying to use new vehicle franchise showrooms to facilitate this with the cost structures that go into there, without having really standalone purpose-built facilities, it's proven out that that's not the right way to go. For me, the way I see it is you kind of combine the best of both of these markets. Standalone used vehicle operations, traditional brick and mortar facilities. There's a large number of consumers like that and still want to go to that, but also being able to provide a direct consumer online proposition and let a consumer decide how they want to interact and how they want to buy their vehicle. Not everybody's going to want to buy purely online. Not everybody's going to want to, walk into a dealership. There's a combination thereof. And to me, that would be, well, let me rephrase that. That's the strategy we're going to go with going forward.
So what's your plan for car store in the future then? Is it going to continue to be part of the business?
Yes, it is. It's there might be different iterations. The footprint's going to look different tomorrow than it does today. And some of the capabilities will definitely come out of there. The one nice thing about having something like Car Store, unlike the at-home delivery, we piloted it through Car Store. Because we didn't have, we weren't tripping over any OEM requirements. We didn't have to worry about something like this. And it was easy to sit here and adjust and be able to ebb and flow on whatever was needed to do. And it's worked out to be a perfect incubator for some of the, systems and processes and ideas that we have.
What were your thoughts when the former Pendragon CEO, Trevor Finn, came out with this says there's an opportunity in the used car market and is planning to return? What were your thoughts when you saw that?
Oh, I mean, his article last week. Hey, listen, Trevor's, he's an industry icon in the UK, and competition's great, and you need those disruptors in the world and stuff like that. As long as it's not at the expense of Pendragon, I wish him nothing but the best. I mean, he built a great company, and I wouldn't be here, and the 7,500 people that I'm responsible for, might not be there either if it wasn't for some of the things he'd done in times past.
So going back a little bit into the past, 2006 time, there was a big sale and leaseback of property that Pendragon did. I believe it was to fund the Vardy acquisition. Mm-hmm. There was 25-year leases on those properties, which is actually not that far away and expire in 11 years. What's your plan to tackle that? I mean, is that going to mean closing dealers, relocating dealers?
It's going to be all of those and more. It's decisions and things that you think makes sense on that one. For example, that's one of the ones that if you go back in a time machine, you would have done differently. Those leases have with the normal increases, how outrun their usefulness. And put us in some things here where it makes it hard to compete. Some of those expire in 2025, some in 2031, and we're working through those with with the landlord and trying to find different ways to work that. But yeah, I mean, it's if you can't get the right deal and it doesn't make sense, you have to sit here and make the best business decision. But James, just as well too. In 2017, when they announced the closure or that they were going to sell the U.S. operations, if I was on the board at that time, I would have strongly and aggressively, advised against that. Those were great assets, and they produce at a very, very high level. Jaguar Land Rover is an amazing brand, especially in the U.S. It's a premium luxury brand, and the locations we had were unreplicatable. You could never buy those brands again, and but once again, you make decisions based on the circumstances that you're in, and then you just have to live with those and adjust accordingly.
I think their hands were probably forced at that time. I think they definitely needed the cash.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think your biggest opportunities as a business are, Bill?
It's a good question. So, I mean, that's a multifaceted, solution, but I'd see where the, biggest opportunities, and we've addressed a lot of this, which is, streamlining our business, closing down the 22 car stores. It was painful shutting those down and having to let those people go, but it was the best thing to do for the health and long-term prosperity, of the company. Going forward, where the biggest opportunities is, once again, we have a great software company that we need to really invest in and help grow. Our leasing company equally so. I do think Car Store is part of our future, and I think it gives us a unique position in the marketplace. But where I really see the opportunities is some of the things we've touched upon is the way people buy cars is going to change, and for a number of years, and it doesn't matter what part of the world you were in. A lot of this has been dictated by the OEMs and a lot of it by the retailers being reluctant to sit here and kind of change and evolve to the way that consumers buy everything else. And I think through this pandemic that, some of those attitudes are going to have to change. and they're going to have to come into it. Now, that said, cars are tactile. You touch them, you taste them, you feel them. You know, a 100,000-pound new vehicle, there's no practical justification. That's not a need purchase. That's an emotional purchase. And when you get into, you know, a vehicle and you can smell it and feel the way it drives, the way it makes you feel, you know, that creates value and helps you sit here and justify, you know, your purchase. And I don't think VR's got smell-o-vision yet, so I don't think you're going to be able to get some of those things through. I'm trying to do things online. But there is a need, there is a desire for consumers to buy that way. You know, we've talked to a large number of the people who have done the home deliveries. They loved it, and they would do it again, and that's the way they're going to do it going forward. So I think, you know, focusing more on our digital capabilities and being able to fulfill customers' designers, give them a you know, an omni-channel, multi-channel approach to buying the vehicle. I think that's going to be key.
What about your biggest risks as a business, Bill?
Biggest risk right now is exactly what we're going through right now. It's just the pandemic, and how, you know, how tough does the economy get as we get out of this, and what decisions need to be made. You know, I'd say the biggest risk in the short term is coming right back into, if we have to go to a second lockdown. You know, if the second wave comes and hits, like you read some of the publications in late fall or early winter, if this turns into like a seasonal flu, and the challenge that go along with that. So I mean, that right now, I think in the short term is, you know, is the biggest risk. And, you know, how long can any of us continue to kind of just trudge along through this type of business? You know, outside of that, in normal times, it goes right back to it, is making sure you don't get disrupted, making sure somebody else doesn't come in and, you know, find a better way, you know, to sell vehicles.
What other car dealer operators do you admire?
You mean, oh, car dealers like
Yeah, I
Publix?
mean,
I mean, you know, I've looked at who you've talked to in the past. I mean, you know, the UK's got some incredible, you know, Sittner, you know, that Penske owns. I know Roger Penske very well. I've competed with him, worked with him. That group's amazing. You know, Virtue, Marshalls, both incredible companies. You know, Motorpoint as well. I mean, that's a unique, you know, marketplace. They've kind of carved out a little niche for them. And then outside of that, you know, would be, you know, BCA. You know, it's not a retailer, but I think Avril and the job that they've done with that business is just unprecedented. Just, you know, what a great company. You know, not only are they a great company, but they provide incredible service. You know, we have some of the biggest auctions in the world from where I'm originally from, and spent most of my career. And I watch with the efficiency and the way they're able to run that marketplace. And even though they have somewhat of a monopoly, you wouldn't know it. So, I mean, there's just lots of great businesses and lots of great people to learn from.
so who do you, in the business world, Bill, who do you look up to?
Oh, I mean, you know, it's lots within the industry. You know, I think Roger Penske is probably, you know, one of those big icons. My old CEO, Mike Jackson. I mean, these are, you know, industry, you know, leaders and icons as it goes out there. You know, if you go into the, you know, OEM side, Alan Mulally with Ford, how he piloted Ford through, you know, the downturn in 2006, you know, has just done, you know, amazing things. But there's, you know, great industry icons out there.
And Bill, will Pendragon ever get back to profitability again?
We were going to be profitable this year. I absolutely firmly believe that. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here.
And yesterday, what were your thoughts when the shareholders rebelled on your remuneration package?
I saw your auto, James. I don't think they really rebelled. You know, we had a unique, you know, remuneration policy that was outside the norms. And, you know, the norms right now in the UK is you're supposed to have 3-year targets and then, you know, cascading out with the remuneration. How do you sit here and project what a company's business is going to be 3 years in today's world? And, you know, some of the reporting agencies that, you know, support shareholders on this have kind of templated the way plans should look. And if you're not within that, they sit here and say, you know, recommend to vote against. We have a large number of shares, 1.4 billion, a long tail. You know, our 4 out of our 4 or 5, you know, large shareholders, all but one sat here and voted in favor of it and thought it was a great idea. It was primarily that tail that went down that way. For what it's worth, we actually did better on this one than we did the one on 2017, which had a VCP. But there's a perfect example. Even that one never paid out. And none of our associates, none of the people that get paid on this way have any type of a bonus or any type of an LTIP for going on 4 years now. So, I don't classify it as a rebellion. We're going to work with our shareholders and make sure that they understand what we're thinking and what we're doing, and continue to grow those relationships and make sure they understand our support of what we're trying to do.
And Bill, what's this crisis taught you?
You know what? It's like anything. There's an adage out there: in good times you develop bad habits, and in bad times you develop good habits, right? So I think it's reinforced that you just have to be very disciplined. With your business, you have to be very disciplined with your cash, and you just can't, sit there and throw money at everything you'd like to do. You just have to be very pragmatic. You've got to run a very clean, efficient business, and you've got to be nimble and agile. For a guy who came up through operations, I've always been a big balance sheet guy. That's not necessarily, always the case in car dealers. And, I'd say, the other piece would be to focus on that and really invest in the future. Once again, back to the digitization of the business. It's going to go that way. You just want to be you want to be one of the first movers, not one of the laggards.
And Bill, finally, would you like an opportunity just to give you a message to your staff?
Just how proud of them I am, especially in the short time that I've been there with them, watching what they've done, what they've given back to the community, what they've done for themselves. And we have associates that are out there picking fruit right now to help out the farmers. We have people that have volunteered to support the NHS. We've had people that are volunteered to work in care homes for the elderly. We've had people that have donated money and time and resources, and that have been incredibly supportive of myself and the entire leadership team. So just how thoroughly impressed I am with them, how happy I am to be, at the helm of this amazing company, and how much I look forward to coming out and being able to meet all of them when we get out of lockdown.
Bill, thank you ever so much for getting up so early over there in Florida for us, and for being so honest and answering our questions. I really
absolutely, James. Anytime. Same to you. Be safe.
Thank you very much. A huge thank you to Bill for giving up his time there. We've got a very busy week next week. Don't forget, Monday's a bank holiday, if you remember what one of those is. Tuesday, I'm chatting to Eden Motor Group CEO Graham Potts. On Wednesday, we're talking used car prices with Cat HPI. On Thursday, it's Peter Waddell, who's the MD and owner of Big Motoring World. And on Friday, I'm talking to the Trust Ford's executive team. If you want to get involved in car dealer lives like this one, you can email me. It's james@blackballmedia.co.uk. Find me on Twitter @CarDealerEd, or on LinkedIn. Send me a message there. If you want breaking news sent direct to your phone, we've set up Car Dealer Magazine WhatsApp groups where we share the most important stories. Get in touch with me to get a link for one of those. And if you haven't already, download the latest Car Dealer Magazine digital copy from our website. It's cardealermagazine.co.uk. And on there, you'll also find a schedule for all the upcoming Car Dealer Lives. Thanks once again to Bill for giving up his time, and I'll see you on Tuesday. Have a great bank holiday. Goodbye.